back to the Daisy Cousens Show. Well, anyone who watches this show regularly will know that, generally speaking, I disagree with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on a regular basis. However, astonishingly, he's done something recently that I actually do agree with. He has thrown his support behind banning kids and teenagers from social media. In the recent budget, he pledged $6.5 million to a trial of age verification technology in an attempt to keep kids from seeing harmful content online. Now, look, while this might sound like a really good thing, and I've been a fan of banning kids from the internet just generally for a long time now, we've got to remember, this is the government that pushed and passed the Digital ID Bill and also pushed the Mis- and Disinformation Bill, which would declare the government the sole arbiter of truth. So it is clear, unfortunately, that this government is intent on introducing surveillance measures on what Australians post online. So, while this is certainly a terrific initiative from politicians, my worry is this age verification tech trial just another way to impinge on the freedom and privacy of Australians under the guise of think of the children? Well, look, joining me to discuss all of that and more is author, commentator and activist for the rights of women and girls, Melinda Tankard-Rees. Melinda, it is fantastic to have you here. How have you been?
Oh, pretty busy, Daisy, fighting on a number of fronts, including trying to protect children from exposure to hardcore porn. This is a long-run campaign, over 10 years, and so we certainly did welcome the government's announcement. There's actually two separate things you're talking about here. The age verification trial, which we have led the charge on for many years, is to protect children. It's one obstacle in the way of protecting children from exposure to rape porn, sadism, incest, bestiality, and seeing women being tortured. And little kids are seeing this content at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. The newer initiative is to extend the age of access to social media for children. So it's not banning kids from social media. It's saying that we're going to increase the age from 13 to 16 because of the global body of evidence testifying to the harms to children. They're being preyed on by bots and predators. They're being groomed. They're being sexually harassed. They're having their images used to create deep fake pornography. This is the reality. So we welcome both those measures, and in fact had lobbied for a long time to rein in big tech.
Yeah, I mean, I think given even when I was growing up as a teenager in the early 2000s, like, you know, the internet was much smaller than it was now, and social media sort of didn't even exist. Even then, you'd run into stuff online as a kid and go, oh, God, what's that? But nowadays, you have to magnify that by about 1 billion, given the type of content that kids have access to. And I think you'd be very hard-pressed to find an adult who doesn't agree nowadays on some sort of restriction for children on social media. The question is, though, can it be done? I mean, there's an awful lot of logistics involved. There are reports have indicated that around the world this type of restriction has failed. What do you think the best way to move forward with this is?
What are those reports saying it's failed? What are the reports saying it's failed? Because these technologies are being rolled out as we speak. They're in 5 countries now. They're going to be in 17 US states. The data is there. You can read about this on Collective Shout. The Age Providers Federation globally have answered questions like yours to paint this as some kind of, dark move, octopus government trying to, restrict freedoms. We agree as a society. There's some common ground. We should agree to protect the most vulnerable, our young people. And the government doesn't hold the data. The government doesn't hold the ID. The model that we support is a third-party independent verifier where the ID is taken and shown and proved that you are over 18. Then you get a digital passport to go wherever the hell you want online. This is hardly restrictive. It doesn't say, where exactly you're going. It doesn't show the sites you're wanting to access. You just get a digital passport showing that you're over 18. Other countries are doing it. why can't we at least trial it? Which fortunately the government has now backflipped on, because it had said no. So we don't want to derail this with some idea that there's nefarious reasons for doing this. The only people that don't want this to happen, which tells you a lot, is the porn industry, which has been opposing age verification from the very beginning. So that's got to tell you something. The vested interests of the global porn industry should not be put before the well-being of vulnerable children who are having their developing sexual templates warped by exposure to porn. 87% of parents want some protections for their children. That's the majority of Australian parents. I'm in schools in this country most days, and the stories that girls are telling me are getting worse. Routine sexual harassment, rape threats every day, demands to send nudes, getting dick pics, underage girls, boys telling young women of colour, "You're my dirty little sex slave." Girls being touched, girls being groped, girls being sexually groaned, grunted, moaned at every day in this country, boys airdropping porn to little kids on the school bus. Daisy, we have a harsh reality to face, and that is that adolescent Australian males are now in the largest cohort of sex offenders generally, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. They are now, according to the International Journal of Child Abuse and Neglect, published in January this year, the largest cohort of offenders against children. Now, this indicates something has gone terribly wrong in the formation of young men. They were not born like this. Now they are the largest cohort of sex offenders in Australia and in the UK, where we have the data to show that. So there has to be some serious intervention if these kids are going to have any hope of healthy sexual development and forming healthy intimate relationships, let alone sustaining marriage and family in the future, if that's what they want.
Well, I think it is. The evidence is very clear that something does need to be done. I mean, you and I, we had this conversation a couple of months ago about the scourge of porn and inappropriate content that young people have access to, and I was just floored and found it harrowing. I mean, anyone who digs into this stuff knows that we have to do something. I like, though, this idea of a third-party model that you're talking about, because I think not unreasonably there are a lot of adults, particularly since COVID, who are concerned about government surveillance and further government intrusion into their privacy, into their freedom of speech, in what they say online. What would you say to those adults to assuage their rightful concerns? Tell us about this third-party model, because I like that model a lot better than the government having a lot of control over this.
Well, the government doesn't hold the data. That's the fact. The government won't have access to this data. The third-party verifier is an independent, approved body. As I said, this is happening in other countries. We don't believe that the so-called right of citizens, including to consume child sexual exploitation material, to troll little girls, as was seen on Four Corners the other day, the so-called right of adults to consume content which is harmful to children, because every click, every download of CSAM material drives the trade in the bodies of those children. And Australians are in the third top consumers of this kind of content, live distant child abuse, for example. And so for too long, the so-called rights of adults has been put before the welfare of children. And if we don't have common ground that we should be protecting vulnerable children, then what do we have? As I said, the biggest lobbyists against any regulation of the internet are those with vested interests, those that are profiting from it. Pornhub, for example, which is a criminal enterprise, which has been implicated in rape videos, child abuse, child trafficking, non-consensual image sharing. There's more than 150 women running civil actions against the biggest porn hosting platform in the world for using their videos, their images without consent. They were drugged, raped, filmed. Why should the profit motives of this criminal enterprise be put before the well-being of children? So if we're balancing so-called adult rights against child rights, I'll go for the children, and so will any any responsible adult will say we've got to put the children first.
Well, exactly, and we are actually looking at a clash of rights here when you think about it. You've got sort of adults' right to privacy or anonymity on the internet, and then you've got the rights of children not to be exploited, not to be influenced badly, not to be exposed to content that's going to very negatively affect their children. And as with any clash of rights, I think you have to look at who the most vulnerable party is, and ultimately, well, that's who most people are going to side with. So I like this idea very much of a third-party verified entity rather than the government having the data. I think that could really be the ground that we need to go on. Because trust me, I'm with you. I want to get kids off social media. I think it's ridiculous. You might as well hand them a crack pipe. It's so bad for them. Now, look, I want to ask you very quickly before we go. There's been a rise in the number of kidfluencers, so to speak, emerging on Instagram and YouTube. Look, some parents do say it's a way for kids to pursue their passions, build confidence and connect with others, but come on, the safety risks surely outweigh the benefits, don't they?
They certainly do, and in fact, Collective Shout has been at the forefront of exposing the predatory activities that are happening on platforms like Instagram. We were ahead of the curve on this. We note the New York Times did a big piece on it recently, and of course, Four Corners, on which my colleague Lynn Swanson-Kennedy was featured. But we've been documenting this for over half a decade, and it's great to see other people noticing. But we have documented the activities of predators where they've tried to talk to the girls, where they have live masturbated to girls' chats, where they have tried to connect with the girls. Parents need to understand that these global forums of men scrape social media for images of girls that appeal to them, particularly underage girls, and they swap them. They have huge galleries globally where they enjoy these images, they trade them, and also they can use the images of the girls that they like and create deep fake porn from them. So they use nudifying apps to undress the girl. They have their face on the bodies of porn stars, for example. So what parent would want to expose their children to this level of grooming and predation and risk, because that's the reality. That's what you're doing to your child. And the platforms are hosting it. We've been running a Wake Up Instagram campaign for years now, calling on the platforms to protect children rather than serve them up to predators and pedophiles on a platter.
Well, look, Melinda, you do the most incredible work, honestly. Thank you so much. I know this is harrowing work that you do, but you do it exceptionally well. I'm very much with you on all of this. All the best with your campaigns going forward. And I'm sure we will talk to you again very, very soon on this very pressing issue.
We really appreciate your concern, and thanks for the opportunity, Daisy.